introduce myself. So, hello, my name is Jessica Zimmerly. I know many of you, and it is also good to see new faces. I am the Program and Outreach Director at Earth Ministry, Washington Interfaith Power and Light, and have had the joy of serving with this organization for the last 8 years. So this is a one-of-a-kind in advocacy, but not my first rodeo here. So it's been fun to switch it up, perhaps. A bit about myself. I come from the Lutheran tradition. I'm a candidate for ordination as a deaconess in the ELCA. And I am 1/4 from finishing my degree at Seattle University's School of Theology and Ministry. So yes, it's finals week, but I'm still glad to be here. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Maddie, to introduce themselves next.
Hi, folks. I'm Maddie. I work with Jessica at Earth Ministry as the operations manager, but we're small, so I also get to come do fun things like advocacy with you all. My pronouns are they, them, or she, her. And my own faith tradition is Unitarian Universalism, and I'm a member at University Unitarian Church in North Seattle. And I am also calling in today from the traditional lands of the Coast Salish peoples, including Duwamish and Muckleshoot. And here at Earth Ministry, we're really trying to make it an intentional practice to do a land acknowledgement for all of our events, whether we're in person or on Zoom, coming from the lands of many different Indigenous peoples. And this is a way to resist erasure of Indigenous histories, as well as to honor tribes and the land itself. So if you haven't already, I'd invite you to put in the chat whose land you're zooming in from today, as well as congregation and your name if you haven't already done that. And if you're not sure on whose lands you're on, there's a really great website where you can just type in your address and look it up. So I'm going to put that in the chat for folks if you need to look up the land. And it's also just a great website to sort of look at your state or anywhere, really.
Thank you, Maddie. And thank you all for taking that moment to acknowledge where each of us are calling from. I'm also on Duwamish land in the north end of Seattle in the Greenwood neighborhood. So a bit of where we will go with our time together tonight before we dive in. This is Earth Ministry's legislative update. Hopefully you found yourself in the right Zoom room. Here we are. Our topic tonight is covering the bills that we have been supporting in the Washington State legislative session, which has been going on since mid-January and will continue until April 25th. And so we are about halfway through. This week was the cutoff for bills to pass through their House of Origin. So we thought it would be nice to come together and share where we're at and what we see coming up. So our loose outline for our time together is that we'll start with just a bit of our observations of how legislative session has been going overall, since it is virtual. And then we will be going into detail on our top 2 priority bills, which are the HEAL Act and the Clean Fuel Standard. Earth Ministry has a slate of supplemental bills that we are supportive of and have been weighing in on as we are able, but we have really identified these 2 as the top priorities for the faith community. So that's where we're going to spend the bulk of our time. If you do want to talk about any of the other bills that we're supporting, you can reach out to me one-to-one, or our website is really full of resources, and maybe Maddie can drop that in the chat. You can also follow along with our bills, and we update where they are in the process on our website as often as we can. The other thing I'll add is, of course, Earth Ministry really values putting our faith into action, so you will have a chance to do that as part of our program together tonight. We will be walking you through how to sign in pro for the HEAL Act. So be ready to use your device at some point, or you can follow along and do it after you get off the call. Okay, so to get started, just a little bit of what session has been like so far. So we are virtual this year. Legislators have been going to Olympia, but it's very minimum capacity, mostly for floor conversations. So average citizens like us have not been walking through the halls, which is certainly a loss. A gain is that there are increased avenues for participation for folks that don't require us to get in our vehicles or take a long bus ride to Olympia. So we have seen increased participation from folks all across the state who now have easier access to do things like sign in pro for a hearing, whereas before you had to be on the Capitol campus and either in the hearing room or connected to the Wi-Fi on your phone to sign in pro or con. So that is a perk and something we hope to see last long term once we are able to go back in person, hopefully next session. Access to participating in democracy is so important. So we are glad to see that value being lived out. That said, legislators are still pretty overwhelmed and trying to help things move as much as they can, but really asking for more, I don't know, organized, coalition-driven testimony in hearing spaces. So normally, we would say like, anyone who wants to come to a hearing, like come to Olympia with us and we'll show you how to sign in the room and we'll help you with talking points. And now it's because time is so short and they have so much to get through and it takes like twice as long with it all being on Zoom. Committee chairs are really asking that we limit verbal testimony and instead encourage grassroots support to show up through sign-ins and through written comments or emails directly to your legislator. And even when you do get to testify, I testified last week on behalf of the Washington Strong Green Bonds bill. And I only got 1 minute and it just flies right by. So really writing something allows you to say much more and share your story in more. Another point that I will make is in terms of an observation, if you have been following along or watching any of the floor conversations, which I wanted to do this at the beginning and it slipped right by me. Can I just see a show of like thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down for if you've been really following along and like the legislative session is one of your favorite things to engage in. If you've been like, oh, I see your emails sometimes, or if you're like, I'm here to learn about the bills, I don't know much. Great, I love seeing sideways thumbs. Down thumbs are awesome too. Okay, that just helps us kind of get a sense of where folks are entering in the conversation. So thank you. So if you are a thumbs up, if you have been following along actively, you might have heard for either of these top two bills, a lot of opposition. So one thing that the lead organizer for the Clean Fuels campaign, who is their policy director at Climate Solutions, she tells us like a broken record that when you talk, that means you don't have the votes. When you talk a lot, you're really trying to like buy time, buy votes. When you know you have the votes, you don't talk so much because you have the votes. So In these floor debates, you know, the clean fuel floor debate went on for hours and hours. And there was a lot of misinformation shared, a lot of fear expressed. And I just want to say that just because those voices are loud doesn't mean that they are indicative of the overall conversation that's happening. It's just the voices that have already decided to vote in support aren't needing to convince anyone of anything. So that's just something to be mindful of. And then the last point I wanted to share is that Earth Ministry has been really intentional this year about working with our ecumenical and interfaith partners on supporting our bills. So we have a new space where we're bringing together different denominational representatives and organizations like the Faith Action Network, like the Washington State Catholic Conference, like Justice Washington with the UU community, coalescing more intentionally around our bills. So these top two priorities that we're going to dig into are really supported across various communities in different spiritual wisdom traditions. And it's been really good to see endorsements and positive support through all of the various partners that we interact with. Okay, before I turn it over to Maddie, who's going to cover our first bill, I'll pause and see if there's any questions about kind of the lay of the land at this point in terms of the legislature overall.
So where's the Strong Act right now?
Washington's strong. We're not going to get into so much more detail on it tonight, but it's has been deemed necessary to implement in the budget. So that means it can go until the very end. So there's more conversation happening around it. It got a hearing, which was a big deal, and is kind of stalled since then, since so much focus has been on the bills that did have cut off on Monday.
Yeah, because it still shows it still shows that it's in, oh, I see, March 4th.
Mm-hmm. And if you're really jazzed about Washington Strong, our partners at Carbon Washington are the lead organization working on that. So I would encourage you to connect there, or let me know offline and then we can talk more. Okay, unless there's any other questions jumping forward, I am going to turn it over to Maddie, and they will cover our one of our top priorities, the HEAL Act, which I'm super excited about. I know I mentioned earlier that I've been around for quite a few years now doing this work, and never have I come across a bill that we've supported that so clearly aligns with faith values than the HEAL Act. So take it away, Maddie.
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, this is a bill I'm really excited about, both as an organizer in the multi-faith community and as a Unitarian Universalist, and feel like it really aligns with my values there. Jess, can you share the slides? Thanks. Great, thanks so much. So what the HEAL Act, the number for it is SB, oh, I don't want to get it wrong. I know
5141.
Jess, I'm looking at a blank tab. I know Jess was saying she might have be having some internet troubles earlier and was hoping it would last through this event. But like Deb said, the HEAL Act is SB 5141. And it's one of two top priorities that Earth Ministry and the rest of the faith community is working on this year to try to pass. And basically what this bill would do. There'll be some talking points up on the screen in a second about it. But what it would do is it would establish a definition of environmental justice and require 7 different state agencies, including ecology and transportation, agriculture, and there's a couple more, I think, that would, and it would require these agencies to implement that definition of environmental justice in all of their work. So that's something that's really exciting to us, and is just really important this year. And this bill, the main folks working on this bill are from an organization and coalition called Front and Centered, which is a people of color led environmental justice coalition. And this is the bill that they've been really asking folks, the faith communities, to support this year. Okay, here are my slides. And so another thing that the HEAL Act would do is establish an environmental justice council at the state level that would actually have real responsibility. It wouldn't just be sort of a, council of figureheads that wouldn't be able to enact real change. And this is, the HEAL Act has come up before the legislature, I believe last year as well, and didn't pass, but this is the year that we're really hoping it can pass. And it would require this environmental justice lens, as I said, to be within certain state agencies. And it would, the bullet points on this slide about strategic planning, goal setting, project implementation, enforcement, reporting, those are all things that this bill would require agencies to implement this EJ lens within. Another thing maybe folks have seen is the Washington State Environmental Health Disparities map, and maybe Jess can put a link to that in the chat. And basically, this, while the HEAL Act didn't pass last year, there was funding included for the Environmental Justice Task Force, which recommended this HEAL Act legislation. And that's also a result of this Washington State Environmental Health Disparities map, which I'd encourage folks to check out if you haven't looked at it yet. It paints a really important picture of, why life expectancies and quality of life is very different in different parts of our state and in different communities, and why legislation like the HEAL Act is so important to pass to ensure that all communities have access to clean air, clean water, and like this slide says, where you live, your income, race, or language abilities should not determine how healthy and safe you are. And unfortunately, if we look at this map that the Environmental Justice Task Force put forth, that's not the case in our state. And that's why we really need the HEAL Act to pass this year. As I said before, this is really important because it centers those most impacted by pollution, and this bit of legislation is recommended. It came from our partners at Front and Centered, but was also directly recommended by the Environmental Justice Task Force. So what the experts on environmental justice and what communities are telling us that we need to pass this year. So where is this bill right now? Its House of Origin or Chamber of Origin was the Senate. It recently passed the Senate floor by 21 votes. And so now it's onto the House, which is really exciting. And we're going to have a chance to take some action and sign in for the hearing that's upcoming. So now that it's in the House, its first hearing will be in the House Environment Committee, actually tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So our webinar tonight is perfect timing for us all to try to take action on this. Great. Okay, now what we're going to do is take some time to take action on this important bill. But before I do that, I want to see, are there any specific questions about the policy? I saw David had chatted me and said, could you please share what the definition of EJ is that is included in the bill, or at least the key wording in it? I don't have that off the top of my head, but I know that Jessica may, or she can find it and send it around later. Jess, are you there? Are you still having tech issues?
Do you want me to read it?
Do you have the definition up, Deb?
I have the definition that they're citing the EPA on. It defines environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies.
Thank you so much, Deb. And I'll add that this is less about, when we say a definition, it's less about the definition of what it means and more about defining what it looks like in the life of each of these agencies. So that is, looking at how it is going to be required in terms of program implementation and strategic planning and reporting, defining what that actually looks like.
Thanks, Deb and Jess. Are there any other questions about the HEAL Act before I walk us all through how we can sign in support of the bill in the hearing tomorrow? Well, great. Well, if folks do have questions, you can, of course, always reach out to us later. We'll put our emails in the chat at the end, so we can follow up if need be. Okay, so as Jess was saying earlier, one really exciting thing about the legislative session this year is the ability to sign in remotely in support of a bill. And that's proving to sort of be a game changer this year in the session. So I'm going to walk us through how we can do this, and then I'll also put the link in the chat so folks are able, and we'll just take a few minutes for everyone to do it on their own time. I want those legislators to wake up tomorrow, get ready for their hearing, and then look, oh my gosh, look at all these people that signed in last night in support of the hearing, or in support of the bill. So here's a page on the Washington State Legislature website about remote sign-in for the committee hearings. It says remote testimony, but we're not actually signing in to testify. As Jessica said before, we're signing in to express our support for the bill. And so the HEAL Act is being heard tomorrow in the House Environment Committee. So I select House, and then I'm going to select, if I can find it, Environment Committee. And then the meeting is tomorrow, 3/12 at 10 a.m. And so these are the bills that they're considering tomorrow. We are concerned about the HEAL Act, which is 5141. And then it has these options. Again, like we said, we don't need folks to all testify live in support of this bill right now. It's actually better for the bill if we can get things moving along faster in this case. So what we're going to do is click, I would like my position noted for the legislative record. And so it has the bill up here, committee, date, time, and then you select your position as pro. And then you're going to fill in all of this information that you need to. So what I'm going to do is put that link in the chat for everyone, and then have us all take just a minute or two to sign in support of the HEAL Act tomorrow. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to, Jess, please say what
Yeah.
you want to say.
One thing I want to add before we start our sign-ins is, like I said, we've been learning a lot as the virtual session has progressed. So you might recall at the beginning, we were giving advice to leave the organization section blank. We are now shifting that strategy and really encouraging you to put something in there that identifies yourself as a person of faith. So not Earth Ministry, though we love you and are glad you're part of our community. For organizations, they more want to see like staff signing in or a lobbyist signing in, etc. So I've signed in for Earth Ministry, so we've got that covered. What you can do is under organization, put something like you're a member of Congregation Beth Shalom, or you are a priest, or you are a person of faith. So something that identifies you as a member of the faith community. You know, there can be kind of hesitation around putting your congregation down. So you might not have the green light to sign in pro for your congregation, but you can say that you're a member of that congregation, and that is just dandy. So you could also say you're a member of Earth Ministry, but that kind of gives a little bit of more of a picture of the broad spread of support for this bill when you put something in that organization section rather than leave it blank. The one other thing, and then we'll do questions, is somebody chatted me and asked if you can sign in if you have already signed in at other points in the process. The answer is yes, and please do. So the sign-ins are what are looked at by committee members before they start their hearing. And each time it's a fresh slate there. So, and if they happen to notice, they're like, oh, the same member of Ballard First Lutheran Church is showing up over and over again. Like, wow, this is really important to people of faith. Okay, noted. So you can sign in one time per hearing, but through multiple hearings along the process. So you'll see this bill likely go to Ways and Means next, and you can sign in then too.
And one thing I also forgot to mention is, so this hearing is tomorrow at 10 a.m. and we're really excited because the both an Earth Ministry board member and the director of the Washington State Catholic Conference are testifying in favor of this bill tomorrow in front of the committee. So we're really excited about that. And if folks want to tune in, you can catch that. And if not, it's really great for folks to sign in pro and show their support for the bill that way.
And
Were you going to cover written testimony?
Oh, say again, Deb?
Were you going to cover written testimony?
We weren't going to go into that level of detail, but if you would like talking points for written testimony, send me a quick email and I can get those to you this evening. We did have a form when this bill went through the Senate floor vote. So we have some language that's quick that you could adapt and use. So if you are jazzed about a written comment, ping me tonight and I'll keep an eye on my email.
Well, just to let people know that you got 24 hours. And then after that, you can't do a written comment.
I didn't know that. So that's great. 24 hours after the hearing?
Yeah. So if the hearing is tomorrow at 10, then you, on the 12th, then you have up until 10 o'clock in the morning of the 13th in which to submit a written testimony through that website. After that, you can't do it. You have to go through your your representatives.
Right. Well, I'm glad to know. Thank you. That is news to me. Apologies if you hear background noise. It's my puppy's dinner time. The other point there to raise in terms of the timeline is you have until 1 hour before the hearing begins to sign in. So we hope you're all taking a moment to do it right now. But if not, and you're going to do it later, you have until 9 a.m.
Hey, Jessica, I know it's in former times, it seems like if you actually did testimony that was more powerful than just saying, yes, you were for it. Is that the case with this Zoom legislative time?
I think that in terms of showing strength in numbers, that sign-ins is the way to go. And oh my goodness, this dog. So yes, in past times, it has been more powerful to get to speak. But for now, we're trying to show strength in numbers and people coming together even when we can't gather, and then leaving the testimony to a few spokespeople. So like I've been working very directly with the Catholic Conference Director and with our board member to make sure they've got really crisp talking points for only 1 minute.
No,
so
I understand that. I was talking about written testimony.
Oh, written testimony? Yeah. If you want to do written testimony, that's great. It's just kind of a next level ask. So our first level ask, easiest is to sign in, but written testimony is also great.
All right, the rules are still the same then.
Everybody on the committee, which is good.
Okay.
Okay. How are folks doing with their sign-ins? I see thumbs up. Yeah. Okay. Yes, good point. Somebody shared, it says remote testimony, but it actually is just noting your support for the record as long as you selected that bullet point. So it's not the most intuitive form if you are just going to that page directly.
Well, thanks everyone for signing in. I can also send an email out tonight after. We're going to be sending a follow-up email later, probably early next week, to everyone that attended. But in terms of making sure everyone has the sign-in info, if you have any neighbors or friends you want to forward that to tonight, I'll send that out in an email a quick, just short email right after this, so that folks have all of that information to sign in. I was just looking at, you can also look and see who has signed in, and I saw so many folks here tonight, and that with their faith communities listed, which was the goal. So thanks everyone so much. Jess, do you want to talk about Clean Fuel Standard now?
Yes, and my dog has relocated, so hopefully you can hear me a bit better. And I'm not going to try to share screen because that fried my computer. So Maddie's got me covered. Thank you. We are now going to shift gears and look at the Clean Fuel Standard. Do you like my car metaphor there with shifting gears? There we go. Clean Fuel Standard is a policy that we've advocated for several years now. This is the year we're going to pass it. It has great momentum, and House Bill 1091 is the vehicle that is moving. So what a Clean Fuel Standard does is it requires fuel producers to clean up their product. And if they don't, they have to invest in low carbon choices. If they, well, we'll get more into that, excuse me. So by the numbers, it's a 20% reduction in the carbon intensity of fuels by 2035. So that means that 15 years from now, the emissions from your car's tailpipe have to be 20% cleaner than they are today. That is primarily accomplished through blending in of biofuels. So this is really amazing to me. You take a dirty fuel and then you take something that's bio-based, so earth-based. We're talking about Sources like excess in agriculture, in the forest industry, landfill waste, and even cooking oil from restaurants. That can be turned into biofuels and then blended in with the fossil fuel existing dirty fuels. And that means that the fuel will burn a bit cleaner with less greenhouse gas pollutants being emitted. Now we know that biofuels can have their own issues. So we're not talking about palm oil. We're not talking about monocrop corn. We are talking about fuels that have passed an entire life cycle emission analysis. So in order to qualify for this program, they do have to actually be less carbon intensive, and that's looked at through the entire life cycle of how the fuel is produced to how it burns. So I think that's really beautiful in the way it aligns up with our values of using all of what we've been given, right? So taking the current excess and surplus within Washington's industries and reusing them, making use of all that the Creator has given to us. I also just want to share part of the campaign effort around this that has been really neat is supporting restaurants that already have companies that pick up their cooking oil and turn that into clean fuels. And there's a whole list of them. I'll drop it in the chat, but it's really neat to see that across the greater Seattle area, especially, that this is already happening, and it's really possible and viable. The other half of the Clean Fuel Standard is not only do we want to clean up what we're using in existing gas powered vehicles, but we also want to move increasingly towards alternative options. So it does a good job in incentivizing electrification. And how it does that is there is a market element to it in which if a fuel producer does not meet their target, they have to buy credits, and those credits are given directly to their competitors in the clean energy economy. And the credits are also, a certain percent is allocated to be invested in frontline communities that are being polluted. So it's different. If you're a bit of a climate policy nerd, it's different than a cap and trade, which we see as problematic, in that the investment is going directly to competitors, which makes it less desirable for companies to just choose to pay the bill and keep doing what they're doing. As we see increased options and competition within the market, that shows prices tend to drop. Because competition, economically speaking, drives that. So there is a lot of misinformation going around, paid for by the oil industry, that will tell you, oh, this is going to skyrocket prices at the pump. It's a myth. It's a myth. We have seen a Clean Fuel Standard implemented in California, Oregon, and British Columbia. We have not seen gas prices skyrocket there. We have seen increasing different options, which is great. And the other point I wanted to share is that a reason why big oil is fueling that myth is because they currently have such a grip on controlling the price of gas, because they have a monopoly on how we get around. They can control the price. And the latest our partners at Climate Solutions shared is that it's about 80 cents per gallon of pure profit that is given to the oil industry within, like when you fill up within the greater Seattle metro area. So we're one of the actually highest profit margins region of our country, which is why they really don't want us to switch off of their dirty product. Let's go to the next slide, Maddie. a bit about why. I got a little ahead of myself here, but transportation is nearly half of Washington's climate pollution. So it's our largest polluting sector and something that we really need to address that will help lessen our contribution to the global climate crisis and also to human health concerns and inequities. As we talked about, environmental justice is a top value for our community, and across the board, you see that cleaner air is healthier communities, and that unfortunately right now, much of the pollution hotspots are concentrated in communities that are low income or people of color, and that is just not in line with our values as people of faith. There are great opportunities for an economic boost through a clean fuel standard. Right now, actually, we create a lot of clean fuels in Washington state that are sent out to our neighboring states where they already have a clean fuel standard. So because Washington is the last on the West Coast to not have this policy, the dirtiest fuels are being funneled in to us, and we're creating cleaner fuels that are being funneled out to Oregon or BC, California, et cetera. So we want to see these homegrown cleaner fuels be used here in Washington state and benefit rural communities with the job creation especially. The bill has passed the House, which is wonderful. This is the third time it's passed the House. So the Senate is its real hurdle, and this is where we are now. So we're gonna turn up our intensity a bit here to get it through. It was heard yesterday in the Senate Environment Committee. If you signed in pro, thank you. You might have seen our Ministries alert about that. If you missed it, don't worry. Next, it will be headed to Ways and Means, and then it might go to the Transportation Committee. It might not. If it goes to Transportation, we're going to have to like go all out because that is where it has stalled in years past. So we have to kind of wait and see based on where it is assigned. It is already scheduled for executive session in the Environment Committee. So that executive session is when the senators will meet to talk about voting on the bill, yay or nay, and take that vote. Amendments will also be proposed and voted upon. So it is scheduled for that executive committee on March 16th. So if you happen to know that your senator is on that committee and want to send them a note, that's great, please do. And I'll say overall, right now, Earth Ministries focus on getting sign-ins as these bills move through the hearing process, but once the clean fuel standard hits the floor, or if it gets sent to transportation, we'll have online actions to make it really easy for you to directly contact your senator in support. Okay, I think that is it for the slides. And now we'll pause to see if there are any questions about the clean fuel standard. Oh, someone else has a dog. Great. I love hearing dog noises on Zoom. No questions.
Well, okay.
Oops. I have a question. So as far as the this last bill that we were talking about, there's nothing that you need us to do right at this moment.
Correct. It was just heard yesterday,
Okay.
and the window, the 24 hours that Deb told us about for written comment has already passed. So we are waiting for it to hopefully pass, and then once it gets to its next committee, you can sign in pro.
Okay, and will you let us know that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
You can, if you follow along too on our webpage, like honestly, bookmark it and refresh it, and then you'll see, and there'll be a link directly to click through to sign in. So we try to make it as easy as possible for you.
Okay.
Thank you, Deborah. I saw Rich, and then Kimberly afterward.
My question is, who decides if this takes a side trip to Transportation Committee or not? Because that,
You know, I am not sure. And I was asked that and was going to look it up and didn't get around to it. If anybody on the call knows, you're welcome to share. I just kind of see it as the forces that be.
Don't they usually go to the Rules Committee first before they go to the Appropriations or Ways and Means? And I think it might be the Rules Committee that redirects, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I
well,
often see
it's Ways and Means, and then it's Rules, and then it's the floor.
Yeah.
Once you're in Rules, then you go straight to the floor. But
I know that there is a committee on committees, which is, you know, such a thing that we get here in church world, right? But they determine who sits on committees. So they might also continue to kind of manage what committee each bill needs to walk through, but I can't say for sure. Would be something worth digging up though. Thank you for reminding me. I'll look into it. Kimberly.
Yes, can you just clarify, Jessica, when I sign in to register my position on a bill, and I say I'm done, and then it takes me to another screen for remote testimony. Do you have to sign in for both of them? It seems so duplicative to me. Or do you just sign in that one time?
With the first time, are you filling out your name and everything?
Yes, yes.
Huh. Usually when I fill out my name and then I press I'm not a robot and then
I'm done.
Mine takes me directly to a page that's like, thank you, you did it.
No.
Kimberly, I think I know what might be happening. So I've noticed before, I've been doing a lot of these sign-ins, both through social justice teams at my church, but also through Earth Ministries work. And often I forget to select pro at the top. And so I fill in all of my information, press I'm not a robot, and then it just stays on the same page because I haven't selected pro at the top. I'm not sure if that's what's happening, but it could be. But yeah, let's connect via email to make sure that we can get you signed in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Mine did that too, but it just took me back. It's just said remote testimony, but I had clicked pro, but it looked like it had gone through, you know, because done, and it did switch the page.
Yes.
It will take you back to a page where you can go through and select another bill. It'll say House, Senate,
Yes.
and then there's a third button, but that's just so you can go back in and select another piece of legislation from a different committee.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Community
Can I-
troubleshooting. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. Hey, Michael.
Hi. Sometimes if I've written a letter to the legislator or I've testified to a legislator and the bill is progressing on, do we still send more letters to that same legislator? Do
So
we
there
still
are,
talk again to that same legislator?
yeah, there are various modes of thought around this. I encourage more communication in that it's really building a relationship with your legislator and it's showing them that you care enough to follow along. You're not just clicking through a form and doing this willy-nilly, but you are watching what they're doing and want them to represent you. The other thing I'll say is if they sit on one of these committees, which you can see on the ledge.wa.gov, it's pretty clear. I'll take you to committees and you can see what the rosters are. So if you see that and you see that they voted yes for a bill at some point, sending a thank you note is like one of the best things you can do because they have to vote again on that bill, right? Yeah. And so they don't hear thank yous often enough. Everybody loves being told thank you and receiving some gratitude. So I think that's a gift that we can especially bring as people of faith is acknowledging that they did follow our values, say thank you, ask for their continued support once the bill reaches the floor.
Very nice. Thank you. That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Jess, Chris had a question about target legislative districts. I didn't know if we wanted to get into that.
Yeah, we won't go too far down the rabbit hole, but I can say the challenge in years past has been Steve Hobbs. He is in the Snohomish area and is the chair of the Transportation Committee. Though I am hopeful he is taken care of, because his main goal is to pass a transportation package, which we also want to see one that is clean and just. And a majority of the Democratic caucus has signed a letter that states a clean fuel standard is a prerequisite for a transportation package to be passed. So the caucus is really pushing him, as this is a priority, and they do have a majority. So he has been one. Other current challenges, if you are in these areas, include, I'm pulling up my lists here, Mark Mullet, which is
That's my district. If anyone in Issaquah, Snoqualmie, North Bend, Maple Valley, Black Diamond, if folks want to connect from that district, I would love to connect with you about, you know, getting Mark Mullet to support a clean fuel standard. Luckily, he voted yes on the HEAL Act, but we really want to see him support the clean fuel standard. Okay, sorry, Jess.
Yeah, Maddie and I have a personal vendetta to get Mark Mullet to support this. Others are Bob Hatsagawa in the 11th. So that's like Tukwila, Renton area. Conway, who is in the Parkland area around Tacoma. And then Vandewedge, which I'm trying to remember. I have this handy book. I'll show you in a second. I'll hold it up. But he is in, oh yes, out on the peninsula. So like Port Angeles, Port Townsend, along that part of our state. And what I'm looking at, just to show you, because it's one of my favorite tools, is this tool called Who's What in Washington Government. It's put out by Washington Roll Call, and it tells you information about each legislator, and it includes their religious affiliation if they share that publicly. So when many of you probably know Jessie Dye, when she and I used to walk through the halls of the Capitol, we would joke that this book was our Bible, because we were always pulling it out and flipping through, trying to get to know who we are talking to. So it's always a good idea to do a little bit of research about who your electeds are and what their background is. So that's a fun plug for Washington Roll Call's book here. We have just a few more minutes here, so I want to see if there's any last pressing questions. I did see in the chat someone asking how frequently we are updating Earth Ministries legislative priority page. I try to get to it right away for the top 2 priority bills, and then for the supplemental list of bills we're supporting, I try to get to that like every other day or so. So we do keep it pretty up to date. You can always click through on a bill number from our webpage, and that will take you directly to that bill's page on the state legislative website. So if you want to double check that it's the most recent info, you can click through there. And if you are really like jazzed and want to support another bill before you step away from your screen tonight, another one of our our bills that we're supportive of is being heard tomorrow, and it's around plastic pollution. It's let me make sure I get the bill number right, but it's 5022. So that I could go into more detail on, but I actually just encourage you to go check it out on our website if you want to learn more. There's a fact sheet you can download, but it's addressing our recycling issues and plastic issues here in Washington, which we know we need to work on. Includes a styrofoam ban, which would be awesome. And then some pieces around like a recycled content mandate, which says that takeout containers from restaurants have to have a certain percentage of recycled content, among some other policy pieces. So if you want to carry on with your faithful advocacy tonight, use the same portal to go sign in for 5022 and select Pro. And Susan, I see a hand.
Yeah, which chamber and which committee?
Oh, excellent question. Let me double check because
Yeah, it's actually being heard in the same hearing tomorrow as the HEAL Act. There's multiple bills being considered. So it's the House Environment and Energy Committee, and then you click the 3/12/21 hearing at 10 a.m. So that's tomorrow. And I just looked, and currently no one has signed in for that bill other than folks that are testifying in person over Zoom. So it'd be great if we could all do that as well.
Can you give that first page again for testimony? I'm not finding it real quickly here.
yeah, I think Maddie's on it.
Well,
Okay.
I'm showing it's at 1:30 in environment tomorrow, the afternoon session.
Let's double check here. Hold on, I'm pulling it up on my quicker computer. Okay, 5022.
Here's what I'm seeing in terms
Okay.
of the bills that are being considered tomorrow. We already signed in for the HEAL Act, which is right here, and here's 5022, which is also being considered. And then someone in the chat had asked, okay, so how can we see who signed in? This little button right here is very exciting. So you click that and you can see who signed in, and these are all people that are testifying, and then these are all people in the webinar tonight who have signed in support of the bill that says not testifying. So if hopefully that helps clear things up, and we'll put the link in the chat as well.
And I found the source of our slight confusion here is that its hearing was originally yesterday at 1:30, but it must have rolled over. So now it's has a second hearing that was just added on for tomorrow at 10 a.m. And when I said yesterday, I mean today, because today's the 11th. Time is weird. Time is weird in quarantine, right?
How can they both be at the same time?
So they'll have multiple agenda items that they'll walk through one by one. So if you tune in to TVW tomorrow, you will get to hear that. You'll hear faith leaders speaking on support of the HEAL Act, which is great. And you'll be able to see the decision makers who you are lobbying tonight. So thank you all so much for taking the time, especially I know if you're in the Seattle area, it was a beautiful afternoon. So thank you for spending it on screen with us here. We are happy to continue the conversation, and we always want to be a resource to make it easy and fun for you to put your faith in action. So don't hesitate to contact either Maddie or myself. And Maddie, can you just drop our email address in the chat? You're already on it. Thank you for speaking up for environmental justice in our state. And please also think about sharing what you learned tonight with a couple folks in your network. You know, we still have until 9 a.m. tomorrow for sign-ins, so you can always email a few folks this evening and give them that direct link and ask them to take action with you too. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night and stay healthy and safe.
And I'll send
Thank you, Jessica.
with all the sign-in information so folks have that in your inbox.
Yes.
Thank you, Maddie and Jessica.
And thank you, Maddie and Jessica.
Thanks so much, everybody.